You ready? It's time for the No Pleasure Pod with BDP1. Buckle up, buttercups. Let's go.
Welcome to the No Pressure Podcast, a show that gives you a real-life perspective on today's hottest topics. We're all grown up here, and this is a no PC zone. I am BDP1 flying solo today, but we have a lot to cover, so let's get into it. Of course, yesterday was the Super Bowl 56 between the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. LA won a tough one, really tight game, 23-20. Basically, they won it near the end with leaving about a minute and a half left in the game, and Cincinnati was unable to get in the field goal range to tie it or take advantage of the time and the two timeouts they had left to try to win the game. But, you know, it was entertaining to say the least. Of course, the game was not without its issues, without some missed calls, and of course there were makeup calls. The most controversial was a touchdown at the beginning of the second half that Joe Burrow threw to one of his second receivers. It wasn't Jamar Chase, but threw it ended up being a 75-yard touchdown pass. But the receiver was locked up against the Rams' number one defender, Jalen Ramsey, arguably the best cornerback in the game right now. And everybody was trying to figure out, like, how did this receiver get so wide open, catch this touchdown against Jalen? Jalen had a difficult game in the first half. He had already, I think, been scored against once, but everybody was just trying to figure it out. So, you know, when the instant replay was played back, you could hear the commentators saying, oh, okay, we see what's going on now. And what had happened was the receiver had gotten into a position where, you know, trying to, I guess, gain an advantage, he inadvertently grabbed Ramsey's face mask and sort of like pulled Ramsey past him. And Ramsey went to the ground. The receiver was able to, you know, recover, get in a position, catch the pass, and then run it in for a touchdown. There was a side judge or there was one of the referees on the sideline there, maybe 7 to 10 yards behind the play. But as I'd said with some other people that were watching the game, the referee, when you watch the video, was in no position to even see the hand on the face mask. You know, the view that we see from television is not the same view that you see when you're running up the sideline trying to keep pace with professional athletes that run 4.3, 4.4 times. And you're trying to keep up with that as well as make an effort to stay on top of everything else that's going on in the play, and then have the wherewithal to actually, you know, throw a flag and blow a whistle and all of that. So me and a couple of my friends, you know, we looked at a couple of different angles, and I was able to actually find a view where one of the judges, one of the back judges, or there's only one back judge, but the back judge should have been in position to make that call. But when you look at the video, you can see that the back judge was also trying to keep up with the play and recover, and you know, just missed it. So some will say that it worked itself out because the Rams ended up winning the game. Once again, there was another controversial call. I think it was third down. The Rams were down in the red zone, Cincinnati's red zone. They were threatening. They didn't capitalize on the first two downs. On the third down, Stafford throws a pass, and I can't remember if it was to Cup or one of the other tight ends or something like that. And it was an incomplete pass. And a late flag comes out, and they call holding. So when you watch the instant replay, you can see that there was some contact, but definitely not a hold. And, you know, people are saying, well, you know, it looks like it was a makeup call. And the argument that I posed was there's no place in football for makeup calls in any professional sport. So if you blow the call, you just have to be accountable to that. If you didn't make the call, if you messed up, then you just have to live with that. You know, these referees, these officials, they get graded on every game, and it affects their assignments for the next game and the next season. So, there's no place for makeup calls. So I agree that, between the time when the touchdown took place, which was 12 seconds into the third quarter, and when this play happened, it was like, whoever it was that threw it was like, yo, we owe these guys one. Let's, give them a shot here. And it worked. But, it is what it is. It's Sunday. I had no dog in the fight, but that was Sunday. Today's another day. Allow the Rams to enjoy their Super Bowl win. Cooper Kupp was the MVP. I think that Stafford, coming from Detroit and having done as well, basically going from a last place team to the first place team, the Super Bowl champion in 1 year, is enough to pacify him. But I could see that he was a little disappointed whenever Cooper Kupp was named the MVP. But, I have feelings about that, another way. But what everybody was really looking forward to was the halftime show, the West Coast halftime show. It was super produced and featured a super producer. It was a halftime show that featured Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar. And there was a special guest, 50 Cent. And it was a phenomenal halftime show. I've seen some say it was the second best behind Prince. I've seen others say that it's still behind Michael Jackson. I think that it was, I'm going to say that it's in the top 5, and I like those other 2 that I named. I also, like Beyonce's show, that show that Beyonce did, and this is going to be a controversial pick as well. The Justin Timberlake one that he did by himself, not the one that he did with Janet Jackson, but the one that he did by himself a few years ago. Those are my top 5, but yesterday's show was off the chain. Everybody has these 50 Fitness jokes, talking about how big he is. A well-known DJ, I'm going to name him, DJ Yoshi, actually posted, I think it was on Instagram or Facebook, and he was like, for all of these people that are making jokes about 50 and, how 50, has gained like 20, 25 pounds, it was like, you have to remember this is 20 years ago, and if you have so much to say, then what you should do is post a picture of yourself 20 years ago and a picture of yourself now, and then let's see. So I agree with that, Yosh. 50 put it down, yesterday. If the show could have been a little bit longer, I think that they probably would have had some other people. G-Unit probably would have showed up for one or 2 tracks. Well, they were only doing 1 track for everybody other than Mary J. Blige, and of course Snoop and Dre were going back and forth. But it was an awesome show. People were, talking about Mary J. Blige was lip syncing, and she did do some lip syncing. And when she did No More Drama, of course, you could tell she wasn't lip syncing because she had the crackles. But great overall show. We'll see what Jay-Z puts together for next year's Super Bowl. Of course, we're at that time of year in sports where people are bored now. You have the NBA All-Star season that's coming up. You have baseball. Baseball players are actually on the verge of a strike, or they're calling it a lockout. But, either way, they're trying to work those things out because baseball season should be coming up very shortly, and it's not looking good. So we'll keep an eye on that for you. But in football's season just ended yesterday. And here we are, 1 day removed, and they're already talking about Matthew Stafford should be considered for the Hall of Fame. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because a couple of other things came across the wire, and I want to get to those things that I feel are more important. But, of course, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. If you didn't know, now you know. Send all of your hate mail to bpresley@thebdpgroup.com. Or you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm not hard to find. But, of course, I started thinking, every time someone brings up Tony Romo, they say that Tony Romo was not a Hall of Fame quarterback. But all of a sudden, everybody's on this bandwagon jumping out saying, absolutely, Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He was actually a Hall of Fame quarterback before he won the Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl just propels him, or I'm sorry, the word was catapults him into the Hall of Fame. So I'm sitting there like, I'm not that, sure. And, I'm not a young guy, so I'm not understanding. I've seen Matthew Stafford's entire career, and Matthew Stafford's numbers are only better than someone like Tony Romo's because Matthew Stafford has played 5 more years than Tony Romo. So, I'm looking at things like QBR. Tony Romo's QBR is higher. I'm looking at things like QB, the overall passer rating. Tony Romo's passer rating blows his out of the water. I'm looking at things like interceptions. Matthew Stafford has significantly more interceptions and only maybe 70 more touchdowns. But, if you're talking about averaging, like maybe 30, 35 touchdowns a season, and Romo has been out of the league since 2015 or 2016. I think more like, I guess we'll say 2015 because 2016 is whenever, Dak took over. But to have that many more games that you've played, we're speaking about Stafford, and you were on a losing team. And we're not talking about losing like 8-8. We're talking about losing, we're talking about 0-16 teams. We're talking about, 3-win teams. How are you considered to be an elite quarterback just because, you were on a team that won the Super Bowl? I saw, most of that game last night, and they were right to give Cooper Kupp the MVP. Because it was Cooper Kupp that made himself available when Odell Beckham, was injured at the end of the first half. Higbee was already, lost at the beginning of the game. Actually he didn't play. So he was already down one of his main weapons. Then he loses Odell Beckham halfway through. And even though they were double teaming and sometimes trying to triple team Cooper Kupp was making himself, available. He was getting open. So, I didn't see that as Stafford, lighting the place up. Remember, he still had 2 interceptions in a Super Bowl game. And I don't think that, they would have liked their chances going into overtime against Cincinnati. Although LA did make some defensive changes, for the second half, and they were getting a few sacks, but I just don't think that Matthew Stafford should be considered, in this conversation for Hall of Fame. I think that we're going to start talking about, well, what about Trent Dilfer? What about Brad Johnson? I mean, we have to, because if the only thing that's going to make you a Hall of Fame quarterback is if you have a ring, then every quarterback that has a ring should be, coming up for a Hall of Fame induction. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what's going on. Still in football, we have another story where the new Dolphins head coach, Mike McDaniel, the story comes out that he says that identifying as a race is weird. Identifying as a race is weird to Mike McDaniel. So for those that aren't familiar, we had over a couple of weeks ago all of the talks about the Rooney Rule and the disparity in minority coaching hires in the NFL, in all pro sports, but in the NFL specifically because it's the end of football season. So, it's a big story. So We are, and I apologize, I have a really good microphone, so I'll try not to make that noise. But the big story was there were 9 openings, and in the end, there were only 2 coaches, 2 non-white coaches that were hired. And I say it that way, non-white. And the reason being, because one is Lovie Smith, who was an assistant coach in Houston, where Brian Flores was a top candidate for their head coaching job. When Brian Flores came out and sued the league or specific teams in the league for its hiring practices, he dropped down the list or dropped down the chart on a few of these teams' wish list. So Lovie Smith gets that job. Brian Flores has since updated his lawsuit to include the Houston Texans, who weren't originally named, because he's saying, that this was retaliation. So anybody that knows, there are certain Title VII elements that have to be met, and one is not going to be race, because both of them, he and Lovie Smith, are black. That one's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. He can say retaliation, but the main elements of Title VII, he isn't going to be able to use. He's not going to be able to use race. He's not going to be able to say that the person was younger than him. He's not going to be able to use sex, because it's man. So it's going to be interesting to see how that lawsuit goes. And if the story holds up, then I'll keep you guys updated and let you know what's going on. But it's just crazy, because this Mike McDaniel was hired by the Miami Dolphins as their new head coach. He has no head coaching experience. But then we find out after they hire him that his father is a black man. Now, when you look at the guy's picture, you can't tell that the guy is black. But, what do we say? One drop, right? So for a story to be done, for him to be interviewing, and he says identifying with a race is weird. He says that he only identifies as a human being with a black father. So, all of us, we're going to be sitting here saying, yeah, maybe identifying as a race is weird when you don't have to identify as a race. So you look like a white man, you act like a white man, and you are, essentially treated as a white man until it was convenient for the powers that be to say, oh, no, this guy is black. His dad's black. Because you already had him in the pipeline, and he was somebody that looks good in your organization. He's close enough to, check off different boxes and still make you feel comfortable. So we're going to keep an eye on that one too, because it's just crazy. We're just in this hypersensitive world now where everything is, the race is coming to the top. You know how the oil, when you're making, a nice stew or a nice soup or something like that, and the oil comes to the top. That's what's starting to happen now, is the oil is rising to the top, not the cream, but the oil, all of the stuff that's bad for you, all of that's coming to the top now. And and let's not go too far from that. It's going to keep it black and white. U.S. women's track and field star Shikari Richardson wants to know how a Russian athlete, the woman is from the women's figure skating team, Kamila Valieva, can still participate in the Winter Olympics after failing a drug test when she, Richardson, wasn't allowed. And that's a good question, but, I already know what the answer is. The biggest difference is that Richardson's case was that the U.S. team decided to keep her off the roster. this Russian girl, her team didn't keep her off. Russia has a history of athletes failing drug tests and thumbing its nose at the IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee. So Valieva, who was 15 years old and a favorite to win gold, received an expedited hearing, which the board said favored her because she's a minor, and the laws offer her more protections versus adults like Richardson, who was 21 at the time of her suspension from competition. I honestly don't think that Shikari is going to receive, any sympathy from the IOC regarding her complaint. But I mean, we have to, it's a valid question, like I said, but there is an answer. I mean, there's a legal, a legal remedy, for lack of a better term. She was held off. She being Shikari was held off of that Olympic team in the Summer Games by the team. The team decided, the coaches, that team decided, we don't want this on here. We would rather have somebody else represent us, and they held her off. They never said, we're doing this because, the International Olympic Committee or whatever. They said, we don't want to submit her as a representative. So, that's just what that is. We're going to have to keep an eye on that and see what's going on. But, there's a lot of things going on in sports right now. Race is coming back to the top. I mean, even in the Super Bowl last night, they made sure to say that they, didn't want Eminem taking a kneel. Of course, he did anyway. And now stuff is coming up like, Snoop Dogg, was smoking weed before the game. You do know it was Snoop Dogg, right? I mean, they knew it was Snoop Dogg whenever they booked the show, right? I mean, I know for sure that they knew because they've been promoting this for months. So Snoop Dogg and weed, that's kind of like, peanut butter and jelly, I mean, you had, I'm waiting for a story to come out to say, and oh my goodness, they were doing something called sea walking. They were, isn't that a game? And it's like, come on, people. So, let's just see how things go over the next few days, the next couple of weeks, and see how much of a stink they make about all of this. See if we start getting some of the Janet Jackson blowback, remember, from Nipplegate, and see, where all of that goes, and if it stays positive as far as the overall view that the Super Bowl halftime show was a major success. So, look, if you guys have any questions, comments, remarks, please send those to bpresley@thebdpgroup.com. That's BPRESSLEY @thebdpgroup.com. And I'll be more than happy to address those on the air. I'm actually going to start doing more of the video podcast because people appreciate that a little bit more. As well, I'll be inviting some guests in the future to participate with me. My man Mo B is not with me today. He had other opportunities or other situations that he had to handle, but he'll be with me coming up on another show. We have some big things to talk about. We wanted to talk about relationships today, with it being Valentine's Day, and people, some people are really into that. So we were going to discuss that, but the Super Bowl is a really big deal, and either you were getting flowers and candy or you weren't anyway. So, I mean, it's a little too late for me to try to fix that for you. But yeah, look out, make sure you check us out where you get your podcast. That's on Spotify, Apple Music. We can also be found on Amazon Music, Deezer, and everywhere else. So subscribe, like, do me a favor, share. It costs you nothing. I'm not asking for anything except for just a fair shot. There's so many other podcasts out there that are peddling in nonsense, and I'm trying to make sure that, you know, we at least get some good information out. It may not be the perspective that you like or that you agree with, but, you know, we're keeping it clean here, and we welcome all points of view. So feel free to shoot us a text on any of those social media platforms, and we will definitely get back to you. Okay? So it looks like we have to wrap this episode. Come back next week when we'll give you the lowdown on whatever it is that you missed throughout the week, and we'll keep our ear to the street so that you don't have to. Check us out or don't. Either way, it's no pressure. Peace. One love.